We are here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Monday, November 4th here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and you're watching News Generation. Today, we're joined by Cheska Dainhong.
Happy Monday, everyone!
Happy Monday!
It's Monday!
And Brooke Prince.
Hello, happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Now, both here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. So, it's Monday, time to talk about some of the latest topics trending among the younger generation here in Korea. Today, we're going to discuss Korea's changing lunchtime culture, largely driven by inflation. So, starting off, what kind of changes are we actually seeing, Cheska?
Yeah, so before we delve into the topic, I just want to highlight why it is so important that we talk about this.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and give a little background of the Korean work culture. I've worked at offices before, and for office workers, lunchtime is absolutely critical. It's like, I think the only thing that we kind of look forward to during
It kind of gives you like a breather, right?
It does, like a motivation. And there's a very common saying among Koreans during the midday, which is, 우리 오늘 뭐 먹을까? What should we eat today?
Very important.
It's the midday recharge for Koreans. So what we eat and how we eat is really important.
Right.
So the fact that there's a lunchflation can affect a lot of those out there. So let's take a look at the screen to see how it is changing. Now, according to recent stats, prior to this year's third quarter, lunch price never really quite surpassed 10,000 won, which is about $720 US. And the average price of a staple lunch menu like bibimbap, cold noodle, is now just around 10,000 won. So if you take into account you grab a nice meal and then try to have coffee or snacks, it can easily surpass the 10,000 won mark.
Right.
And I can actually speak from my own experiences because I'm obsessed with kimbap, which is the rolled rice with veggies, and have been eating it for about 4 or 5 years, so I can track the prices going up. You could really get a nice roll for about, I would say, 2,000-3,000 won. And now it's about 4,500 just to get the basic one. And usually we talked about it, if you're trying to get the nicer one.
Yeah, with toppings.
Yeah, like with more stuffings.
Yeah.
It can actually go up to about
10,000 won.
So because of that, people are now resorting to either in-house restaurants like the work cafeteria or packing lunches, which Brooke will talk about a little bit more, and even the convenience stores because the prices are much lower. And in fact, compared to 2 years ago, the convenience store meal preps have risen about 18%. So I guess that reflects the changes in people's consuming choices.
I see. So with lunch meals becoming more costly, becoming more expensive, people are opting for more affordable options. And as Cheska mentioned, and we've just seen the stat, the average cost of lunch for office workers here in the country has for the first time surpassed 10,000 Korean won, which is over $7. Now, this trend is often referred to as lunchflation, a mix of the words lunch and inflation. So, Brooke, I want to ask you, how are office workers, especially those among our generation, coping with this situation?
Yes, this so-called lunchflation effect has had an impact on the eating habits of Korean office workers. In fact, according to a survey released last year by mBrain Trend Monitor, 44% of office workers said that they would heat up cheaper, ready-to-eat food from marts instead of dining out. 33% said they skipped lunch entirely, which is very sad news.
Right, you should never do that.
Exactly. And 31% said that they would refrain from what's called hushik in Korean. Right, it sounds like a sin, right? Hushik is like a cup of coffee or some kind of dessert.
Yes.
So they would just give up on that to help ease the financial burden. So these days, instead of going out and enjoying the Korean lunch classics like naengmyeon, bibimbap, jjajangmyeon, people are opting for going to the company cafeteria, packing their own lunches, or buying much cheaper convenience store foods. Particularly these convenience store lunch boxes. They sell for around 4,000 to 5,000 won, just a few dollars, and they are gaining popularity as a solution for this lunchflation dilemma. Additionally, there are some people that opt for buffets instead. The logic seems to be, well, let's try to get the most bang for my buck. At least, even if it's a little more expensive, I'll get to eat a lot, right? Also, supermarkets have been very busy during these lunchtime hours because they also have a ready-to-eat convenience food section. And the sales of these foods have been increasing by 5 to 10% every month. So yes, overall, we're definitely seeing people seek out cheaper options during their lunchtime hours.
Right, and I have a quick tip for those who are living in Korea. If you have a big supermarket near where you live or your office is, right before the closing hours of a supermarket, they actually sell like these ready-to-go meals or food at a much lower price. So if you're eyeing for affordable options, this might be a great tip for you.
Definitely.
Right. So we've now mostly talked about the situation in Korea, but Jessica, I want to also know, is this situation of lunchflation similar, or can we see this in other countries as well?
It's an interesting question. Maybe, perhaps, but we do have to bear in mind the very fact that price necessarily doesn't tell the whole story.
Right.
Because every country has a different market price, different living standards. Brooke and I are both from the States. We know that the living standard, or at least the salary, is very different when it comes to the States versus South Korea. In fact, $7.20 for lunch is unimaginable in cities like Manhattan or Los Angeles. With that in mind, if we take a look at the screen, again, we have to take into account the fact that each country has a different living standards, market prices, and inflation. But Switzerland, as we know, is #1, and United States was ranked 5th with about $20. And I would say, Brooke, that's about right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
20, you could get a nice sandwich or like a salad. And I would say in Korea was 60th, and it went as far down as $1.60 in some countries.
I see. Now, Brooke, are there any other countries or examples that you'd also like to share?
Yes, before I go into that, I will say I used to live in Los Angeles, and $7 would be a dream.
That's what I'm saying, yes. Unimaginable.
But yes, in Korea, we've been talking about this 10,000 won threshold that we've now breached. And looking at other countries for comparison, we can look at Japan, where the average cost of lunch is around 4,300 won, or just
cheaper.
over $3, about half the price that we're seeing in Korea. And like we've been mentioning, the US is a totally different beast, with office workers very much struggling with this $20 price point. That's around 27,000 won, almost 3 times the average of 10,000 that we've been talking about today. And as a result, Americans as well are in the same boat, trying to find more frugal ways to enjoy their lunch.
Right.
In one report, 3/4 of respondents said that this lunchflation effect has changed their eating habits, but the extra preparation that they have to put into making their own lunches and things like that is impacting them negatively on multiple fronts. 73% said that by having to do this meal prepping, it was cutting into their meal or their free time, and then they also said that it was causing them stress. Because like we've been talking about, lunch is supposed to be that time when you ease your stress
happy hour,
during the day.
right?
Your happy hour, but nowadays it's been a little bit more difficult for people as they try to approach it in a way that will not break the bank.
That's kind of sad to hear, lunchflation. But you mentioned how lunchflation, excuse me, has changed the eating habits of a lot of people, especially the young generation around the world. And because of rising lunch prices, many employees are now bringing their own lunches or opting for convenience store meals, which often means that you're eating alone because you normally eat by yourself at a convenience store, or if you bring a lunchbox, I see a lot of people eating at their own desks. So this is quite different from the traditional Korean lunchtime, where most workers would eat with colleagues during a set lunch hour, usually from noon to 1 p.m. So let's now take a moment to kind of compare Korea's lunchtime culture with that of other countries. How is it similar, and how does it differ?
Yeah, as I provided in the background before we started the topic, in Korea, eating is a very important part of our culture.
Right.
When you eat together, you mingle together. So in Korea, it is very, very common to see a group of office workers heading to the restaurant together in groups. And I actually think it has some nice added benefits.
Right.
I also remember when I was working at the office, sometimes you just don't want to eat alone, and it's a great socializing hour, and it's kind of gets you out of that cubicle, right? And as we mentioned earlier, mealtime is part of the work benefit. So we get about an hour, and people usually enjoy coffee time together afterwards as well. And it was really nice when the boss took us out to eat together for lunch. He would pay for everything, and we could choose what we wanted to eat. But I also had to work my way to kind of secure my own lunch time when I wanted to go, let's say, just to a cafe, because sometimes you just don't want to eat, right?
Yeah.
You just want to take a nap or recharge. And those can be quite difficult in a culture like Korea, where people kind of do things together during those breaks. In some European countries, I heard, not so sure, but they don't have like a specific lunch hour.
Oh, so not a set lunch hour.
Not a set hour. But for my French friends, which I have their testimonials, lunch is very, very important in French culture. So they would take a full hour, and sometimes they can take up to 2 hours.
Wow.
Because of work lunch.
That sounds nice.
Yes, very nice. Bonjour.
You'll get to have lunch, and maybe you'll have a lot of time to enjoy dessert as well.
Exactly.
If you have a 2-hour lunch break.
I think they really know the delicacies of how to enjoy the life to the fullest. Yeah.
I see. Now, Brooke, you're from the States, so tell us about the typical lunchtime scene in America, too.
Well, keep in mind that I have not lived in America for almost 10 years now, so things have actually changed a lot from my research. Back when I was an office worker in the USA, we had a full lunch hour, and I was able to just eat at my desk or go out to a restaurant if I wanted to, and I never worried about taking that allotted time. But apparently, these days in America, the lunch break is getting shorter, getting closer to around 30 to 45 minutes, and there are a lot of headlines about Gen Zers saying that they actually skip lunchtime a lot, or they take a very short break because they're worried about what their bosses might think about them taking that break. So things have changed in America as well. But in terms of the cultural difference between the two countries, I'll tell you a little story. I used to teach English here in Korea about 8 years ago, and they gave me an option of eating alone in my apartment on campus or eating in a school cafeteria with the rest of the teachers. And of course, I'm an American. We come from an individualist culture where our lunchtime is kind of our me time. It's our time to decompress and kind of be by ourselves. So of course, without thinking, I took the option to take my lunch break separately. But I realized later on, once I learned more about Korean culture, Korea is very collectivist in nature. We've been talking a lot today about how eating together is very important. So I think I probably put some unnecessary distance between myself and my coworkers at that time. And if I could go back and do it again, of course I would eat together. So I think that is a really interesting cultural difference between the two countries.
Right. So we've now compared the lunchtime culture here in Korea and that of other parts of the world. Now, for more on what the culture is like around the world, we also asked our viewers about typical lunch choices and locations for office workers in their countries. And let's take a look at some of the responses. Benny D97 says, in the Philippines, people eat Filipino dishes or fried dishes most of the time, and they dine out at the cafeteria or at their boardroom. Joseph IAN8I says, normally rice, some meat curry, some fried vegetables, soup, and some fruit. They eat in the staff mess room. Dore1529 says, at work, if I can spare the money and time, I eat at fast food restaurants. So we've also taken a look at our viewers' comments and taken a look at lunchtime culture in other parts of the world as well. After a short break, we're going to invite an office worker from the Philippines to our talks.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
So today we're joined by Jade Zaina Humawes, a Gen Z office worker from the Philippines. Welcome back to the show, Jade.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's nice to be back.
Nice to have you back, and happy Monday.
Yes, happy Monday, everyone.
Great. So Jade, I want to ask you, what's the usual lunchtime scene like for office workers in your country, which is the Philippines?
Of course, in the Philippines, lunch break usually lasts about an hour and are a big deal during the workday. It is a time when people grab a meal with their coworker, helping to build a friendship, of course. Many folks bring homemade dishes in containers, often featured classic foods like adobo, sinigang, menudo, and such, while others might grab some quick and cheap street food or from local eateries nearby. So potlucks are also popular, where everyone shares their food, making it a fun way to bond. Plus, lunch breaks give people a chance to relax and catch up with friends. So these mix of good food, family traditions, and socializing makes lunch culture in the Philippines really special.
I mean, what you said definitely makes me salivate. And I know Philippines is definitely, wonderful in its cuisine. So we are also wondering, is lunchflation a thing or an issue in the Philippines as well? And if so, how are people managing rising lunch costs?
Nowadays, we can feel the lunchflation in the Philippines. And yes, I did notice the effect of it, especially on my finances. the rising of meal costs strains my budget, which often forces me to cut back on lunch spending or sometimes seek cheaper and less nutritious options. So in order for me to deal with it, I opted to do meal prepping and pack my own lunch, which I think is the most efficient and cheaper way to do. I do sometimes go out and set budget for a big lunch when I feel like rewarding myself, but on typical days, I try to cook, pack, and bring my own lunch to work.
Oh, you seem like a very good cook, Jade.
I know, these pictures look
really
incredible.
so good.
Yeah, this
Thank
conversation
you.
is making me very hungry. But one more question for you. Do you have any tips for enjoying a tasty, hearty lunch that's also affordable?
I mean, we saw her lunch packing,
Yeah,
but
I think you'll have some great
Yeah, the
tips.
tip is just learn how to cook, I guess.
I think as someone with busy schedule, I personally think meal prepping is the best tip I could give. It really saves both time and money, like obviously considering packing your own meals from home, using leftovers from dinner to save, and of course reduce waste. And also you can opt for a simple, healthy and budget-friendly recipes that fits to your liking and create a variety of dishes using staple ingredients that you can find at home and also you can find at your local farmers market. So if you're pressed for time, if you're really busy, street food and local eateries can be an option, which is I think they can offer lower prices. Joining a potluck with friends can also add variety at a low cost. Remember to pack snacks like fruits, nuts, and bring your own reusable water bottle to save drinks and save the environment, of course. If you do eat out, I think look for lunch specials and use coupons or apps for discounts. So by following these few tips, you can, I think, enjoy satisfying lunch without straining your budget.
Wow, amazing tips. Also considering the environment as well.
Yes.
Oh, all right, Jade. Thank you so much always for
Thank
your
you
time
so
today,
much.
and talk to you soon.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
I mean, Jade gave us really great
Yes,
tips
I feel
on
so
how to,
inspired.
Right, how to cope and deal with lunchflation. But I'm pretty sure that you guys will also have some great tips to share with our viewers. So ending off our episode today, do you have any tips for us to enjoy a hearty, healthy, but also a very delicious meal?
Oh my God. I mean, bear in mind, I'm just tagging on to what Jade said
Yes.
for everything plus, because she pretty much said everything, including how to save the environment by carrying the tumblers.
That's right.
But I actually want to suggest something that I did that was kind of out of the box because everyone takes lunch at the same time. If you tweak the time frame just a little bit, you can actually also enjoy your me time. So what I did, instead of going to the restaurants all together, I would actually go to the cafes or parks by myself or with colleagues and then enjoy the peace and quiet before the lunch hour rush came to the cafes after the meal. So do a little bit of reading, maybe zone out. Sometimes I would just even take a nap to recharge because I think lunch hours is really important for your social energy. So, and then before going back to the office, I would either grab the kimbap, like I mentioned, or sandwiches, and just eat outside to enjoy a little bit of the fresh air before going back to the office.
Oh, that's
So,
a really good tip.
yeah, it may not be for everyone, but this is a new idea for those who might need a little bit of encouragement to do something different. Yeah.
Can I also share a tip as well?
Yes, please. Yes. Yeah, I feel like you would have great tips. Yeah.
I think that meal prepping is a really good idea, as Jade mentioned. So these days, what I really like to do is I look at the social media, Instagram, and they have great reels on meal prep recipes.
Yes.
They're healthy and they're also really affordable, and most of all, they're easy to make because all you need is most of the time a microwave. So I suggest looking or checking out those reels so that you could get some great ideas for your lunch. What about you?
I love that tip, and I've certainly watched many reels. I just haven't done the follow-through part.
You only saved it.
Yes, I watched them, but now I need to do the cooking. But yeah, personally for me, I like having 1 to 2 larger meals a day instead of smaller meals.
Oh.
So I would prefer to have maybe a snack during lunchtime and then a really fulfilling, hearty meal for dinner when you're less rushed. So maybe if you want to do that, you could get a meal replacement bar or a protein shake from the convenience store as a very cheap option. Or as we keep saying today, as our guest Jade mentioned as well, meal prepping is a great idea.
Right.
I remember my stepmom when I was younger, I would watch her every Sunday. She would make all of her meals for the week and it would take hours and it seemed like it was such a pain. But then for her entire work week, she would just take her lunch box out of the fridge and it was ready to go. So meal prepping can be a good option to save some money. Also, I would just say in general, don't deprive yourself. If there is a restaurant meal that you're really craving, maybe give yourself one cheat day a week.
Treat
one
yourself.
day where you treat yourself, and the rest of the days, that's when you can be a little more frugal.
Definitely.
I mean, it is definitely something we look forward to throughout the day. So why not treat us when we can do it, right?
Exactly.
Right. So hope our discussion today helps you deal with lunchflation wisely. And that's all from us today, but NewsGen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks today to Cheska Dainha.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Brooke Prince.
Thank you. Hope you both have a great lunch today.
I'll try. And thank you everyone for watching and see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.